So hello everybody, we're so glad to have you with us today. This is an event with the Footsteps Festival 2021, which is a year-long festival celebrating living well with pain. The festival was conceived by a group of people who got together on Twitter, and it's a true co-production with people who live with pain, those that care for them, and healthcare professionals. We are very lucky to be supported by the Live Well with Pain website and the Physiotherapy Pain Association, both of whom have great resources, and I highly recommend checking them out. And of course, we want to thank the Flippin Pain campaign for supporting the Footsteps Festival so generously. Flippin Pain is a public health campaign which aims to flip people's understanding of pain in a fun, accessible, and reliable way. Initially based in Lincolnshire, it is fast-going national. Please do check out their website. Again, the link will be in chat. Today, we're joined by Professor Cormac Ryan, who is a professor of clinical rehabilitation at Teesside University and is the community pain champion for Flippin Pain. He's a very well-respected scientist and educator, but most importantly of all, he's an amazing dad. I'm Nikki Jones, one of the Footsteps Festival organising team. I've had severe trigeminal neuralgia, which is facial pain, for 18 years. I've had multiple surgeries and been on very many medications and had a pretty torrid time of it for quite a long time. But nearly 3 years ago, I flipped my understanding of pain completely, and with the help of a pain management app, I've essentially recovered. I'll admit that recovery looks different to how I imagined it, but it's still absolutely great. And understanding and working with the concepts that Cormac will speak about in this presentation formed a large part of that recovery. So with no further ado, I'll swap over to Professor Cormac Ryan, and Flippin Pain presents Chronic Pain, the Dr Seuss way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Nikki. I'm just going to see if I can share my screen. There we go. You guys should be able to see that now. Perfect. Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Cormac Ryan. As Nikki has already said, I'm Professor of Clinical Rehabilitation at Teesside University, and I'm also the Community Pain Champion for the Flippin Pain campaign. The talk today is a bit out there. It's fun, it's different, it's an unusual way to approaching pain. And it came to me one night when I was reading a bedtime story to Isla. This is Isla here enjoying a high octane roller coaster ride. And the book we were reading one night was called I Had Trouble in Getting to Solla Sallew by Dr Seuss. I had never read it before. And as we began reading it, I realized that a lot of the concepts that were included in it were the same concepts and models that I was teaching to my physiotherapy students earlier that day around pain management. And I saw that the story about the protagonist, who I affectionately called Jim, mirrored the story of someone with persistent pain. And so I thought it would be a wonderful way of helping to communicate some of these key concepts, some of these academic concepts in a fun and engaging type way. And so this presentation was born. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read passages of the book, and then I'm going to stop after each of these passages and sort of identify what that passage relates to with respect to a pain model. So there are 4 different models or concepts we're going to explore today. The fear avoidance model, central sensitization, misdirected problem solving model, and the stages of change model. So hopefully just sit back and enjoy. Okay, let's go if we can. This is when the technology just dies and it doesn't move as I hope it should. I'm afraid I'm having trouble, Nikki, already. I haven't even moved on from slide 1 and it's not going to move on slide 1. Any ideas at all about how I might get it to move?
Damn it.
You may need to stop sharing and reshare again, Cormac.
Okay.
The aid will switch it off and switch it on again.
Usually works.
Genius. Okay, I will try and do that. let's see. Oh, hold on. Let's try this. Hey, genius. Thanks, Dermot. Okay, so here we go. I was once happy and carefree and young, and I lived in a place called the Valley of Vung, and nothing not anything ever went wrong until, well, one day I was walking along, and I guess I got careless. I guess I got gawking at daisies and not looking where I was walking. And that's how it started. Sock, what a shock. I stubbed my big toe on a very hard rock. And I flew through the air, and I went for a sail, and I sprained the main bone in the tip of my tail. Now, I never, ever had troubles before, so I said to myself, I don't want any more. If I watch out for rocks with my eyes straight ahead, I'll keep out of trouble forever, I said. But watching ahead, well, it just didn't work. I was watching those rocks, then I felt a hard jerk. A very fresh green-headed Quilligan quail sneaked up from the back and went after my tail. And I learned there are troubles of more than one kind. Some come from ahead and some come from behind. So I said to myself, now I'll just have to start to be twice as careful and be twice as smart. I'll watch out for trouble in front and back sections by aiming my eyeballs in different directions. I found this to be quite a difficult stunt, but now I was safe, both behind and in front. And then new troubles came. That brings us to our first model, the fear avoidance model. If we follow the story of Jim there, I'd like you to reflect on your own pain journey and think about if you can relate to what's just happened to Jim, an event and then a response to try and prevent that event happening again or to try and minimize its impact. And it really translates across to this model, the fear avoidance model, which is one of the bedrock models of modern pain management. The model was developed in 1983 by Letham, and over the past 40 years or so, it has changed and developed, but the basic concepts still remain the same. We're just going to talk through it. So if you can imagine an event occurring, that event could be a sudden event like a car accident, or it could be a more gradual onset event for no obvious reason. But that event is followed by a pain experience. Now, when the pain experience happens, the model suggests there are two roads that a person can take, a high fear road and a low fear road. If we go to the right and follow the low fear path, this is when a person is not particularly worried by the pain, regardless of how intense that pain is. It's not something that causes a great deal of concern or anxiety or worry. And they continue to do as many of their usual daily activities as they can. And this is referred to as kind of confrontation. They're carrying on despite the pain, doing as much as they feel they can. And this leads to recovery. It leads to the pain alarm system sort of calming down and appreciating that it is safe to continue with these activities. And that's what happens, and that's the road that most of us take most of the time, but not all of the time. People can also go to the left-hand side to take the left-hand road when that pain experience occurs. And this happens when the person has moderate to high fear levels about the pain and what it might mean and its consequences. If the fear and anxiety and worry levels are higher, it can lead to catastrophizing. Now, catastrophizing is future thinking in a really negative way. Like if the pain occurs, I don't think this pain is ever going to go away. I think this pain could really mean that something sinister is going on. This pain could mean that I've got cancer. This pain could mean that I'm going to end up in a wheelchair. This pain could mean that I'm not going to be able to support my family. I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage. All of these negative future thinkings that are not necessarily rooted in any a degree of fact, but we all do it. It's a very human thing to do. When you pepper on top of that some threatening illness information, what do? You go on the internet and plug your symptoms in to see what it might be. And of course, then you hear about all these terrible potential things that it could be. And that just feeds the catastrophizing and makes it even worse, increasing the threat perception that of the pain and the pain experience, leading to hypervigilance. Hypervigilance is when you really monitor and scrutinize every sensation to the nth degree. Oh, I had 11 darts of pain today. That's 3 more than I had yesterday. I think it might be getting a lot worse, but then it's only 3 less than I had the day before. And those darts of pains, some of them are lasting 10 seconds and some of them aren't lasting 12 seconds. And you really scrutinize every sign and symptom. The best way I can describe this is from a little bit from my own life. So when my wife and I first got married and we bought a house together, and it was an old house in Scotland with an old roof. Old houses tend to come with old roofs. And one of the very first nights, I could hear a drip, 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 and then it almost struck me in the face, this drip as it came down from the ceiling. We had a leak. I had no idea what that meant sort of financially. We didn't have a lot of money at that time. And my wife was pregnant at that time. I didn't know all the ramifications. So I was thinking, are we going to have to remortgage the house, etc., etc. Now, the roofer came the following day, patched it up, and it was fine. And it never leaked again. However, I don't think I ever slept again in that house. For the next 6 years that we were living there, I would lie awake at night for really long times, listening to the groans and the creaks from the roof. It's unbelievable how loud old roofs are if you really listen to them. And every time it would rain, I could hear the pattering, and I was wondering, is that pattering outside on the eave chute or is it coming down? And each time I was worried about what the ramifications of what that would be if there was another leak. And it began to get quite all-consuming. I had become super hyper vigilant. And then about 5 or 6 years later, as I said, we moved house. And the first house we moved to was a rental. And I slept so soundly. I slept so soundly because the roof was not my problem. It was the landlord's problem. And if something happened to it, then he had to do something about it, not me. So that's the best example of sort of catastrophizing and hypervigilance that I can give. And it demonstrates that it's not always about health issues, and it's a very human thing to do. But most of us do it with respect to health things. And I think persistent pain is one of those things which really draws it out of a human being, this catastrophizing and hypervigilance. And it naturally leads to avoidance and escape behavior. Again, you're not a human being if you don't try to sidestep pain. Perfectly normal thing to do. You might say, oh, well, look, I'm not going to go to the shops today because the pain's really bad, or I'm not going to do any more gardening just in case I'm injuring myself. I won't do it. And then slowly but surely that avoidance and escape behavior leads to disuse, disability, and depression. Depression rates in people with persistent pain can be very, very high. 50% or more of people with persistent pain report depressive symptoms. And this feeds in to the pain experience, and you get this negative feedback loop where pain leads to catastrophizing, leads to hypervigilance, which together lead to avoidance behavior, which leads to disuse, disability, depression, feeding back into the pain experience, and so on and so forth in a really vicious circle. And what we all need to do, the individual, their friends, relatives, and healthcare professionals, we need to look at ways we can help people to move to the right of this model, to come off this merry-go-round or probably merry-go-round's not a nice word for it. Awful go round would probably be a better description of it. And bring them to the right, bring them to this area where they begin to reduce the fear and anxiety associated with the pain, to help them to move towards sort of that confrontation type activity. It's not easy to do, but it's that model, and understanding it can be a really helpful way of appreciating that where you are on it. I think it's really worth reflecting for a moment. If you are someone with pain, looking at that model and thinking, does it apply to you? Can you relate to it? And if you can, where are you on that model? And begin to think about if you're on the awful go round, what steps might you be able to take to step off it and move to the right? Okay, so we come back to Jim now. How's Jim getting on? Then new troubles came from above and below, a scritch at my neck and a skrink at my toe. And now I was really in trouble, you know. The rocks and the quail and the scritch and the skrink. I had so many troubles, I just couldn't think. So what we see here is poor old Jim started with a tailbone problem, but now he's got a problem in his toe, his neck, he's got a scritch, a skrink, it's all going on. It seems to have widened, become a bigger thing, moved, and again, become all consuming. And I'm going to use this as an example to talk about central sensitization in its most global way. In persistent pain, our alarm systems can become supercharged, supersensitized. And this happens as a way of protecting us, because the purpose of pain is to protect us. But unfortunately, it can often become overprotective. So our alarm system, which is our immunonervous system, passes on danger messages, messages that are pass on messages of threat and danger, and are our body's way of protecting us. Now, these nerves are usually sensitive to a degree, and they're good at passing on messages. But when we experience pain, they get kind of bombarded with these danger messages, and they want to become better at sending them. There's small little gaps between all these nerves. And as they pass messages on to one another, they use things called neurotransmitters, which essentially are messages being sent on between nerves to help relay the information that needs to be sent. But in persistent pain, there's so many messages that want to be sent, our system can't cope. It's a little bit like the post office at Christmas time. They get so many messages sent that they just can't cope with their usual workforce. So what they do is they increase the number of employees, the number of post people, and they get those guys to work longer hours so that they can accommodate all the messages that need to be sent. And essentially, our neuroimmune system does the same thing. Our pain alarm system does the same thing. It becomes supercharged. It changes chemically, so it's better able to send those messages. And three key symptoms occur which can help you to identify that central sensitization occurring. The first one is a thing called allodynia. In allodynia is when a non-noxious stimuli, usually non-painful stimulus, is interpreted as painful and is experienced as painful. So even just simply resting your hand on a sensitized wrist will cause pain. A stimulus which shouldn't cause any pain at all does so. That's allodynia. The next thing is hyperalgesia. Hyperalgesia is when a painful stimulus becomes really, really painful. So again, if I had a sensitized wrist and I slapped it, that stings a little for me, but within a couple of seconds, it's gone. But if I was having central sensitization around that area, that would be super, super sore. Okay, so allodynia and hyperalgesia. Then the third thing, or the third change you see, is that the pain almost begins to move. Now, the idea is that these chemical changes that occur that help to improve our alarm system, to send messages and make it more sensitive, they spill out into neighboring channels and neighboring nerve pathways. It's a little bit like, imagine your house was on fire. You might call to your neighbors and ask them to come and help to get rid of the threat and to overcome the challenge. In the same way, our nervous system calls to neighboring nervous systems to help to handle the threat. And the best way to protect against threat is pain, because the purpose of pain is to protect you. And that's why many of us will feel our pain moving or getting bigger over a larger area. Think to yourself, can you relate to this? Did your pain start in an area and then seem to move over a bigger area and become really, really sensitive? If it did, then it's likely that central sensitization played an important part and plays an important part in the maintenance of your persistent pain. Okay, so what now happens to Jim in the story? Well, Jim does what any of us would do, I think, when we begin to get any troubles, and that he goes to seek help. And that's what happens in the next sections. So there I was, all completely surrounded by trouble, when a chap rumbled up in a one-wheeler wobble. "Young fellow," he said, "what has happened to you has happened to me and the other folks too. So I'll tell you what I've decided to do. I'm off to the city of Solla Sallew on the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo, where they never have troubles, at least very few. It's not very far, my camel is strong. He'll get us there fast, so hop on, come along." I jumped up behind him, then all through that day, the wobble wobbed on in a wobblesome way. The road got more bumpy, more rocky, more tricky. By midnight, I tell you, my stomach felt icky. And so I said, "Mister, please, when do we get to that wonderful town? Aren't we almost there yet?" "Young fellow," he told me, "don't get in a stew. At sunrise, we'll drive into Solla Sallew and you'll have no more troubles. I promise, I do." But of course, he had lots and lots of troubles. And this guy led him on a merry dance, and it was an awful time for poor old Jim. And towards the end of his encounter with this guy, he was actually in a worse place than when he met him first. And he leaves Jim sinking on a sort of a riverboat. And as he does so, I floated 12 days without toothpaste or soap. I practically almost had given up hope, when someone up high shouted, "Here, catch the rope." Then I knew that my troubles had come to an end, and I climbed up the rope, calling, "Thank you, my friend." I got to the top, but it wasn't a friend, and I saw that my troubles were not at an end. A big man on a horse scared me out of my wits. He bellowed, "I'm General Genghis Khan Schmitz. There's a war going on, and it's time that you knew. Every lad in this land has his duty to do. We're marching to battle. We need you, my boy. We're about to attack. We're about to destroy the perilous Poozer of Pommelmoose Past. So get in line. You're a private, first class." Again, someone who appeared to be going to help Jim leads him on another merry dance, and by the end of his encounter with General Genghis Khan Schmitz, again, he's in a worse off position. Then eventually he gets to the banks of the river Wahoo, and just outside Solla Sallew, where he wants to be. There it was, with its glittering towers in the air. I'd made it. I'd done it. At last I was there. And I knew that I'd left all my troubles behind, when a chap at a doorway that shimmered and shined waved me a wave that was friendly and kind. "Welcome," he said, as he gave me his hand. "Welcome, my son, to this beautiful land. Welcome to sweet, sunny Solla Sallew, where we never have troubles, at least very few. As a matter of fact, we have only just one. Imagine, just one little trouble, my son. And this one little trouble, as you will now see, is this one little trouble I have with this key. There is only one door into Solla Sallew, and we have a key-slapping slippered, we do. This troublesome slippered moved into my door 2 weeks ago, Tuesday, at 3:45. That's my favourite line. Since then, I can't open this door anymore, and I can't kill the slippered. It's very bad luck to kill any slippered, and that's why we're stuck, and why no one gets in, and the town's gone to pot. It's a terrible state of affairs, is it not? And so, said the doorman of Solla Sallew, my job at the door here is finished. I'm through. I'm telling you what I've decided to do. I'm leaving, he said, leaving Solla Sallew on the banks of the beautiful river Wahoo, where we never have troubles, at least very few. And I'm off to the city of Boolaboo Ball, on the banks of the beautiful river Woowall, where they never have troubles, no troubles at all. Come on along with me, he said as he ran, and you'll never have any more troubles, young man. I'd have no more troubles. That's what the man said. So, this brings us to the third out of the four models we're going to talk about today, the misdirected problem-solving model. As I said at the start of this bit, Jim did what we all do when we have troubles. We seek help, a very natural human thing to do. Unfortunately for Jim, he encounters not so useful help. And I want you to think about your own journey and the help that you've sought. And I liken these encounters that Jim has had with the three healthcare professionals of the apocalypse. Essentially, three different healthcare professionals, if we think about it that way, who have all led him on a merry dance, whilst possibly very well intentioned. None of them have produced the results that they promised or that Jim was looking for. Now take a look at this misdirected problem-solving model. Take a look at the top of it first, where it goes from pain interruption to worry to hypervigilance and back to pain interruption. And immediately you'll see the overlap between that and the fear avoidance model. Now, if we keep looking at worry and we follow the line to the right, and it goes down to the biomedical problem frame. The idea is that because of the worry, the person seeks help, and they frame that the need for help within a biomedical framework, within the biomedical model. Now, can I begin by saying that the biomedical model is brilliant. It has helped us in so many facets. Without the biomedical model, where would we be for something like COVID? Without a vaccine and the way that the biomedical model has been used to create the vaccine, we'd be up the creek without a paddle. So the biomedical model is brilliant, but it's brilliant in the right place and the right time and the right context. And that is not persistent pain. When it comes to persistent pain, the biomedical model is a very poor fit. It's the relationship between the state of the tissues and the amount of pain we experience is very, very poor. And as such, the biomedical model is not a good, not well aligned with persistent pain, and trying to solve persistent pain with biomedical solutions is essentially a really bad idea. How many of you have done just as Jim has done, sought help and gone to a healthcare professional who has, in very well intentioned, assisted you in sort of obtaining different biomedical interventions, like, for example, strong painkillers like opioids. And when those problem-solving behaviors, when they don't work, and the evidence for opioids in persistent pain is very, very weak. On average, there's less than a 10% improvement in pain with opioids for persistent pain. So the problem remains unsolved. That leads to an increase in worry. And we go back to that hypervigilance and pain interruption loop, come back to worry, and we try another biomedical solution. But that doesn't help either. And the problem remains unsolved. And we go back to worrying again. And we keep trying biomedical solution after biomedical solution. in what is known as the perseverance loop. Usually perseverance is a really good trait. It's what helps us to solve really difficult challenges. But in this case, that perseverance loop just leads to more and more problems because we're trying the wrong solutions. And the idea is that it's misdirected problem solving. And we waste an enormous amount of time and effort and life energy and resilience in applying these particular solutions. To think of all the appointments you've gone to, all of the travel time to those appointments, all of the time spent in the queue, and then think of all the time recovering if you've been through surgery, how much time and effort that took. If you think about the opioids, how much time and resilience it took to deal with many of the side effects associated with it. If those problem-solving abilities were targeted in a more directed, more appropriate way within a more biopsychosocial framework, encouraging you to take more active physical and psychological therapies that have a more firmer evidence base behind them, the biopsychosocial model is a much better fit for persistent pain. And as such, biopsychosocial solutions are far more likely to have a benefit. And that's why understanding the misdirected problem-solving model can be such a useful and empowering thing for people. If they can see the pattern that they've been going through, if they see that it continues to bring about negative results, it begins to highlight, well, okay, perhaps a change is needed. And that is where we go back to our protagonist, Jim. He's been to the 3 healthcare professionals of the apocalypse. They haven't helped. And now another one is offering a new magic bullet, a new way out. What is Jim going to do? And this, of course, is where my slides seem to have stopped again. For some magic reason. Who can say? But I am going to do what worked the last time, which is hopefully not misdirected problem solving. And let's see if I can figure this out. No is the answer. Yes, I can. What a result. Okay. So I'd have no more troubles. That's what the man said. So I started to go, but I didn't. Instead, I did some quick thinking inside of my head. Then I started back home to the Valley of Vung. I know I'll have troubles. I'll maybe get stung. I'll always have troubles. I'll maybe get bit by that green-headed quail on the place where I sit. But I've bought a big bat. I'm all ready, you see. Now my troubles are going to have troubles with me. That brings us to the 4th and final model that I'd like to talk about today, the stages of change model. This model is a model used to understand human behavior change, and it was developed by Prochaska and De Clemente to help us to better understand cigarette smoking and the process of quitting cigarette smoking. And according to this model, there are 6 stages: pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, action, maintenance, and relapse. And it can be applied to really any behavior, certainly any healthcare behavior. If we look at Jim was in the pre-contemplation stage initially. So after his troubles began, he went and sought those help from those various different helpers along the way. But to his mind, he was doing the right thing. There was no need to change that approach. That was the right thing to do. It wasn't until each of those solutions failed and each of those would-be helpers let him down drastically that he became aware that a problem existed, but he still wasn't really sure what to do about it. Then he moves into the preparation stage, and this is where we meet him here. He's intent upon taking action. He's aware that there's a problem and he wants to do something about it. And he takes action of getting a bat. Now he's ready to move into the action stage, the maintenance stage, to begin batting those problems away and to keep doing that over and over again. That's obviously Jim's story, but take a look at it, reflect on it, and see if you can relate it to your story. Where are you in the management of your pain? I would say that very few of you, I suspect, are in the pre-contemplation stage. If you are, then it's surprising that you're at the Footsteps Festival. If you're at the Footsteps Festival, then I think you've moved in to at least to the contemplation stage. You're aware that there's perhaps you haven't been managing it as well as you might have been, and that perhaps something needs to change. And you're moving, I would say, more into the preparation stage. You're thinking, what are the tools I need to help me manage this pain better? Is it more information? Is it more skills? What is it? And you're trying to seek it to get it. And here at the Footsteps Festival, there are so many different strategies out there to help. Many active physical and psychological strategies that you can tap into, whether that's exercise, activity, mindfulness, whatever. And then you actually are you already putting those things into action? Have you been maintaining those things for years? Or have you relapsed? Maybe you were doing it for months, even years, and then things just drifted down and it fell apart, and you're looking to kind of get back on the good management path. Understanding the stages of change model can help you to think about where are you on your journey. And if you understand where you are on your journey, then you can begin to think about what are the next steps that you need to take to help you to manage your pain better. And that's essentially, I had trouble in getting to Solla Sallew and how it relates to persistent pain. But before I finish, I just want to ask you one question. Who were the poozers to you? The poozers of Pommelmoose Pass. These are the guys who suddenly came out of nowhere, who were unrelated to Jim's initial troubles. To me, the poozers represent anxiety and depression, and the sort of the baggage that often comes alongside persistent pain, and how much more challenging they were making things for Jim. But I'd really like to know, as you were reading this story yourself, or you were listening to this story, if you thought the poozers were for you, who they represented. That's pretty much it. Thanks very much, guys. Looking forward to any questions you guys may have. Thanks very much.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Cormac. That was just brilliant. Do you want to pop your screen
I will.
up? And
Yeah. Well, let's hope so. Let's hope I can. Here we go.
Right, there you go. Beautiful. That's lovely. Thank you so much. That was heard it before, but it was even better the second time. So thank you so much. What brings home to me that this book was written in 1965, so human. Mm-hmm. All these reactions are completely logical. They make complete sense, and pain is protective. So why wouldn't we fear it? Mm-hmm. So,
absolutely, Nikki. I think you've hit the nail on the head. This book is all about the human condition, and I don't think there's anyone who could read this and not relate to it in some way. It doesn't have to be about persistent pain. It can be your bizarre obsession with your leaking roof, but it still completely fits with you. But I think it does apply to the persistent pain journey also very, very well. I think there's huge overlap.
Yeah. Brilliant. Well, let's get to some questions. Nadia is asking, Why does central sensitization happen, basically?
That's a really, really brilliant question. And it's essentially our body's way of protecting us. Through millions of years of evolution, we have adapted to have this predictive system which tries to sense where the danger will be and to protect us from it. And if you think that your body is danger, and when I say you, I don't mean about the conscious you, I mean the subconscious alarm system that's built within us that we don't control. If that system perceives a threat or danger, the most natural response in the world is to up the protective system. And that protective system is pain. If the whole purpose of pain is to alert the conscious person to something and to get them to do something about it. And the more it wants you to do something, the more pain it will produce. It's a really genius, very clever system, which has protected us for millions of years. The problem, I guess, is that it was designed for a caveman, or cavewoman, indeed, and where we have acute threats. I can't say the word threats very well. Threats, acute threats. And they either, the lion either catches us and kills us, or we escape and we're fine. What we're much less good at is dealing with, we're not designed to have persistent pain. It's a kind of a much newer scenario, a sort of post-caveman scenario. And I think it's a legacy of our caveman past, this sort of overly protective system. And it's doing a wonderful job protecting us. You know, we need that. Pain is awesome because it is protecting us, but unfortunately it's protecting us so well that even normal, natural, ordinary, healthy things that we need to do for our everyday life become sore to do as well. And as such, it does the exact opposite to what it should be setting out to do. It no longer helps us. It actually begins to hinder us.
Yeah, absolutely. See, for me, learning that it's essentially almost a brain misfunction, that the brain has tried to help me and has sort of just gone into overdrive, really helped me to reduce my fear levels. Hurt does not equal harm and all those good things, and that really helped me. We've got quite a few people asking how you flip your understanding, how you do this, how do you confront your pain, what do you do? I'd say, from my point of view, I think the answer is probably different for everybody. There's some essential truths, but unfortunately it's down to you to find your own path, hopefully with a lot of help. I don't know if you think the same.
I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, I think you're probably far better positioned to answer that question than I am. But I agree with you. I think it's a personal journey for everyone. And I think if we look at the stages of change model, everyone's probably at a different point in their journey. Sometimes they're ready to change. Sometimes they're not. But for me, and you know, I've had a persistent pain at times as well, and when I have, it's a lot of the time you lose track of what you know, and you kind of you kind of go, that's not me. There must be something wrong. And structurally, for this pain to be here, otherwise it wouldn't be so strong, otherwise it wouldn't be so persistent. And then over time, you begin to reflect on what you know and what you understand. And it begins to almost soak down, that it helps you to stop worrying or to worry less about what that pain might mean. And that kind of helps you to move on, to do more of your usual everyday activities. And over time, and often a very long amount of time, that can help to flip your understanding. And as your understanding flips, I think a lot of other things begin to change positively as well. But it takes an awful lot of time. And as you say, it's unique to everyone. I mean, in your journey, Nikki, what was it? Was there a specific nugget of information which initially started things going?
I always say there were three things that happened to me. One, I started ballet lessons, and I started to learn to love my body again, to move it without sort of pain and with love. I had a conversation with my brother-in-law, who's an obstetrician consultant, about how pain becomes your identity. And although I didn't see that pain was my identity, I certainly saw that what I saw as my bravery in pain had become my identity, which was a bit tangled. And then I was just really ready. And then I saw an ad for a pain management app on Facebook and thought, oh, I'll have a look at this. And I just realized that so much had changed in science, because I'd stopped looking. I'd been told so many times that my pain was intractable, it was never going to go away, and just to go away. And I that's when I found Lorimer Moseley. So his videos made a massive amount of sense to me. And I mean, it really is, I know you called flipping pain, but for me, I really did flip my understanding of pain completely. And it's when you can reduce that fear. For me, fear has been a big poozer, really big. And sometimes it's been pain that I didn't actually recognize as pain. And also the other thing that happened to me is that I tapered off some of my medication. I was on a very high level of opioids, and I probably can't say it on the recording, but they steal your giver, you know. I just couldn't, I was in a rut. I didn't have the wherewithal to actually care about much. But when I reduced those drugs, I sort of woke up enough to actually take an interest. So it's different for everybody, and you've got to be ready. And I don't know if I'd had this information back in 2005 when I did a pain management program, if I'd been ready to listen. You can't say that, can you? All you can do is keep moving forward and keep going. So, but Katrina wants to know, how can we get this knowledge into places like general GP practices? And I know the answer to that one from you.
Yeah, I mean, the Flippin Pain campaign is all about trying to bring these messages and this information to the masses. It's a public health campaign which tries to change the way that people think about, talk about, and treat persistent pain. One that tries to push against the, very strong, pervasive biomedical understanding of persistent pain, and to kind of push back towards a more biopsychosocial understanding in all facets of our community. Not just people with pain, but their friends, relatives, their neighbor, their employer, and indeed their healthcare professionals. And healthcare professionals, I would argue, are speaking as a healthcare professional myself, are equally I believe it was it I think it was Homer Simpson, who talked about them being both the problem and solution to all our problems. And I think healthcare professionals, we're kind of the same. I think a lot of the time we peddle a lot of the biomedical information in an inappropriate way, often with the best of intentions. And that's in part due to our training, but also just how pervasive the biomedical model is everywhere. And I think it's crucial that we improve the training of healthcare professionals, both at undergraduate level for those coming up. And I think those new guys are the most malleable, and I think where we really need to target, but also trained healthcare professionals. And so the Flippin Pain campaign has a number of healthcare professional targeted events, as well as targeting events for the general public. And we've got a couple of GP events coming up, and I think GPs are crucial to target. And I have a huge amount of respect and sympathy for GPs who have only a small amount of time to tackle enormous issues and are under enormous pressure to deliver often hard medications, and many of them are aware of the problems with doing so, but can't necessarily come up with an appropriate alternative, and thus the status quo is maintained. So how do we spread the word? We do things like this: the Footsteps events, brilliant; Living Well with Pain events, Flippin Pain events, all of these things. The key is how we then bring this out to the mainstream, how we change it from being 99 people on the chat to, 9 million people on the chat. That would be pretty awesome. If you begin to do that, then I think you begin to truly change the system. And who knows, someday that might happen. But at the moment, we're definitely fighting the good fight, but we're the little guy.
Yeah, I think the social and biopsychosocial is doing an awful lot of heavy lifting as well, isn't it? We need to add political and cultural and societal into that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's nearly always after these events, someone emails me and says, "Do you not think the biopsychosocial model is a bit restricted, and we should be looking beyond the psycho and social component?" I absolutely agree. I use the term biopsychosocial in its broadest sense to include those political issues that you discussed and all the rest. But you're dead right. The problem is so multifaceted.
Yeah, it's amazing. So we're running into sort of the end of time now. I'm going to pop up a poll for everybody. If you could just do that for me, would be amazing. And we'll just maybe take one more question. Has that come up for everybody? Hopefully. Good. I think people have appreciated this, which is good, and it's certainly a very different way of presenting this information. I mean, we need to try and find as many different ways as to get this out to somebody, don't we? And to see what they enjoy. The trouble is, it's meeting people where they are, isn't it? It's putting the information out there enough that everybody knows where to find it, and that's certainly what we're trying to do at Footsteps. Somebody's asked in the chat if I'm still in pain. Now, it's hard to give percentages, but I would say 95% out of pain, and it used to be 100%. When I am in pain, I tend to be able to cope with it. I mean, I used to get horrendous migraine type neurogenic headaches, which I used to have to jab myself with sumatriptan. Now I get on my bike. That's how I solve them. But that's 2, 3 years of very hard work behind that. And that's what, managing pain is at least a part-time job for me. I still have to, keep the work up. And it's fun work, so it's not really work. but I do have to manage myself and keep the psychology up and everything. So, you know, it can get quite difficult, but it could also be fun. It's almost a prescription to look after yourself, I see, with chronic pain these days. So it's one way of looking at it. And yeah, but if you want to see more of my story, check out the Flippin Pain event on the 7th, which I'll tell you about shortly. But there you go. But Cormac, is there anything else you want to add before we wind up?
I generally speaking, this is the point where you say no, because if you bring up something else, that's the point where you bring up something awful, you get harpooned and you think, God, I wish I had said nothing. So I'm going to learn by my own mistakes on many occasions and say, no, there's nothing additional I'd like to talk about.
We're delighted to have you back at any time. Would be just brilliant. Anyway, it's been brilliant. And Pallavi has noted that you know, she's just really struggled that online explanations work better for her. So again, it's finding what works for people, isn't it, in presenting people with the right information. So it's good.
Absolutely. It's so hard to find the right information out there. You know what I mean? I don't know about you, but because I'm clearly interested in persistent pain, I'll often look at things in my browser about persistent pain. And so I get so many messages and contacts from, let's say, unwanted parties about persistent pain, and I often click on them just to hear the messages, and it just makes me so sad to hear the messages that come in where the biomedical model is you know, permeated again and again and again, and I've never encountered one of those unsolicited contacts where someone has said, have you heard of the biopsychosocial model? It's a new way of trying to look at understand your pain. So I think, again, we're the silent minority, and we need to speak louder and get the message out there.
Yeah, definitely. Somebody's asking about the video that I found so helpful, which of course is the great Lorimer Moseley, which, I mean, just go and look for him on YouTube. But he's associated with Flippin Pain, isn't he? In a sort of loose capacity.
Yeah, I mean, the Flippin Pain campaign itself is very heavily modelled on the Pain Revolution campaign that they're running in Australia, and he's a consultant into the Flippin Pain model, and many of our key messages mirror the messages that they're delivering in the Pain Revolution. A lot of the things we're doing, like the cycling peloton at the end of this summer, where we're going to cycle around Lincolnshire, kind of doing community engagement events and public speaking about persistent pain in small rural communities. That's very similar to the Pain Revolution events that they're doing. So but Lorimer definitely has that X factor. He's such he's such an enjoyable person to listen to. And I guess that's part and parcel as well of the Dr Seuss presentation. It's about trying to move away from the dry delivery of material and just deliver it in some slightly different, kooky way. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I think broadly speaking, this is one of my better ideas.
Oh, I think it's brilliant. And I mean, certainly the poll results, which I'll show you later, seem to be pretty good, that everybody seems to be more willing to pick up a metaphorical bat now. So that's good. Some people need help, which is why we like to call it supported self-management. So yes, but yeah, pick up that bat, everybody. You'll feel a lot better for it.
I think the supported in self-management is hugely, hugely important. I think self-management strategies alone, they're lacking. But if you can put in that supported element, I think it transforms it.
Definitely. And the other thing, I mean, pain management programs, unfortunately, are time limited and it's a one-off. I mean, I had one in 2 days and it was I was never updated. You know, imagine if, you know, continued professional development, which would be brilliant. But we can hope. resources, which is why maybe going online is the way to do it. So we can. Okay, well, that's absolutely brilliant. And I think we'll wrap up now, if that's all right with everybody. I just wanted to tell you quickly about another event we have at Footsteps called Pain is More Complex Than I Thought, which will be very interesting with the amazing Tina from the Living Well Pain website, who will be talking all things pain and complexity with Chris, who's an excellent clinical psychologist. If you want to book, the link is in the chat further up. Again. There you go. There you go. There it is again. Also, Flippin Pain are doing a very interesting free event on Zoom on Wednesday, 7th of April, called I Wish I Knew Then What I Know Now. It's an event which is all presentations from people who live with chronic pain or who are recovering from chronic pain, including, I'm very scared about it now. Never mind. And what we wish we'd known or what made a difference for them in their journey. So the details are on there. And if you have any feedback at all at any time, please do email us at info@footsteps-festival.co.uk and give us excellent feedback, and that would be brilliant. So yes, the presentation will be recorded. We'll get it up on the website as soon as we've edited it and tidied it up a bit, and hopefully it'll be a resource for everybody. So can I thank everybody for coming? It's been brilliant to have so many people here. And Cormac, again, thank you so much. That's been brilliant.
Thanks for the invite, Nikki. Thanks to everyone for coming.